All right, hey guys. I am not here today, obviously. I'm sick and not feeling well, and I didn't want you guys to fall behind. So I went ahead and made the recording for today's lesson. So make sure you have your notes out on your desk and you are ready to listen and follow along. Um, so obviously this week we've done a lot with our slope intercept form as well as our standard form. So all of these are part of our linear function family, which we've talked about create our lines. So we know slope intercept form gives us a slope as well as our y-intercept. So hopefully we're able to write this as y equals mx plus b. Sorry about my handwriting, guys. I'm doing this from my Mac at home, so it may be a little messy. We know from here that our m is our slope, and we know that our b is our y-intercept. Our standard form we learned last week, so we'll see how many of us remember this, and this is our ax plus by equals c, and this is the one that gave us both of our x and our y-intercepts. Now today we are learning about our point slope form, which it pretty much tells us exactly what it gives us. It gives us a point and it gives us our slope. So this is written as y, sorry guys, minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now, in this information we know we are going to have our y1 from a coordinate point and our x1 from a coordinate point, okay? And then our m is obviously going to be our slope, which we're either going to be given or we're going to have to find, okay? This y over here is left as y, and this y is left as y, and this x is left as x. Okay, so I know that's kind of a lot, but this is the one that we're going to be focusing on today, and that's my pretty little star, so all of you can laugh at me right now. So how do we write an equation in point slope form? So to do this, we need two pieces of information about our function. So we need to have our x and our y. And we also need to have our m, which is our slope. Okay, so we need our point and we need our slope. So it's pretty straightforward. So for example, our point could be 3, 2. And we can say our slope is 4. Okay, so that's just given information. I didn't discover this yet. I'm just giving this to you as a random example. So once we know one point and one slope, or obviously the slope, we substitute our point and our slope into the form. So now from here we're going to place the values a lot harder than it looks, guys. Place the values into the formula for the point slope form. So we know that our formula is y minus y1. So let's look up here at our point. Here is our y value. So y minus 2 equals m, which is our slope, 4 times x minus x1. Well, we know up here, our coordinate point we're using has an x value of 3. So we just placed our information directly into the equation, nothing super fancy, okay? So, um, remember, for each example, we're going to complete our point slope table, which is just like that example we saw up there, where we have our x, y, and where we have our m, which is our slope. Then we're going to go ahead and write the point slope formula, and we're going to substitute the numbers and check your work. So again, our formula, just so we have it written on here for us to see, is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, so part 1 says we're given a point and a slope. So that's pretty easy for us. So if we come over here and we do our little table we know, we've got a point of -3, 2, and we've got a slope of 5 halves. So this is our x comma y, and this is our m. So when we're plugging this in, we do the same thing we just did before. Y minus our y1 is 2 equals m, which is 5 halves, times x. Now this is a tricky one because our equation says x minus, and x1 is a -3. Now just because we have the minus doesn't mean we don't write the negative. But since we've talked about this, when we see minus a negative, that really means plus. So our actual final equation should be written as y minus 2 equals 5 halves times x plus 3, which this means I should have a -3 as my x and my +2 as my y from my coordinate point, which I do up here. So that is the first one. Not too bad. Number 2, so we're going to do our little table over here, which takes me a bit longer than y'all, so mine's going to be a little bit sloppier, but we have our xy and we have our m. We know that x is 4 and y is 5, and we know m is 8. So this one's pretty straightforward because all we have to do is plug straight in because there's no negatives like this last one to where we have to make any changes. We just have to be careful that we plug the y in for the y and the x in for the x. So y minus y1 is 5 equals m times x minus x1. So that one was pretty straightforward. Nothing super tricky we had to do on that one. Okay, next one, we make our little table again. Again, sorry, mine's messy. It's a lot easier when you've got a smart board. So my coordinate point is -1, -3, and my slope is -2. So again, we're just going to plug straight into our equation. So I've got y minus, now my y1 is a -3. So I'm just going to write it like this for right now, and I'm going to come back, equals m times x minus x1. Now there should be some bells and whistles going off because if we see we've got minus a negative and minus a negative, which just kind of looks kind of funky. So there's obviously something we're supposed to do. So whenever I see minus and negative, that really means plus. So y plus 3 equals negative 2 times x plus 1. And that would be our final answer for this one. Now, 4 and 5 are kind of special. So we know if something has a 0 slope, remember it's like walking on a treadmill, it's a horizontal line. So I'm going to show you on my x and y axis. We know it looks something like this. Oops, we're going to pretend that's a really straight line. So these are always written as very special equations, 4 and 5. So if I have a vertical or a horizontal line, we always see which axis it's going through. So if you notice, no matter where I draw a horizontal line, what axis is it always going through? Okay, hopefully you said the y-axis. It's always going through the y-axis. So when I have a 0 slope, no matter what form I'm writing it in, whether it's standard, whether it's point slope, or whether it's slope intercept, I write them all the same. Because it's going through the y-axis, I find the y value in my coordinate point, and I write y equals 8. Okay? To be a little more exact for that one, I'm going to erase this right here. Oops, I'm going to erase this. And I'm going to show you if I were to actually plot this point. Oops. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So my point is 4, 8. So there's my point. And I know if my slope is 0, there's no counting up and over. I know this is my line, which means it's going through the y-axis at y equals 8. Now, this is the same thing for number 5. Bells and whistles should be going off in our head because if we look at this, I'm going to draw another x and y axis, and I'm going to put negative 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So there's my point, right? Now, if it's an undefined slope, I know it's a vertical line. So again, now with a vertical line, no matter where I draw it, whether it's over here, over here, over here, it's always going through my x-axis. So for a undefined slope, you will always write it as x equals whatever the x value is of that point, which is x equals negative 3. I'm not sure why this is the only one I'm boxing. So this is how you write both of these. These are very, you should be excited when you see 0 slope or undefined slope because they're like your easier ones. Okay, the next example is given the point and the, given the point slope form, find the point and the slope of the given line. So remember, our formula is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, okay? So I'm going to draw my little table, and this is where I'm going to write what my x and y value are and what my slope is. Okay, so let's look. So we've got y minus y1. So I know that y1 is a positive 3. Now this is where people get confused. I tell people for this one, you always give the opposite of what you see. Because right now you see -3. So a lot of people want to write -3. But if you remember, we're just plugging directly into our formula. So when it says y minus y1, that means our y1 was a +3. And then if you see over here, it doesn't say x minus 5. It says x plus 5, which means my x must have been a -5 because my formula had to be changed to a plus. Okay, so if you look back at our ones that we did before, you'll see that this is the case. Then obviously our slope, that's a really easy one, would be -2. Okay? Okay, number 7. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw my little table. That one's a little bit bigger, sorry. X and Y. And my slope. All right, again, if you need to write this above each equation, do it. So y minus y1. So normally I'd put y minus my point, but because this changed to a plus, I know my y must have been a -5. And then I know over here, same thing, equals m times x. Now, normally it would be just x minus 1, but because it changed to a plus, that means my x must have been negative as well. And then my slope is +2/3. Okay? Let's go to the next one. Oops. X, Y, and slope. Okay, so if we look at this one, we see there's nothing over here with my y, which means my y must have been 0, because if I have y minus y1 and it's y minus 0, there's no point of having it there. So obviously I have a 0 here, and then x minus 7. So I know that it is a +7 because we just placed it right into our formula, x minus x1. And then we see our slope is -8/9. Okay? Number 9, very similar to that one. We've got an x and a y, and we've got our slope. Now, if you see, we've got our y minus, we just placed our y1 right in place there. So my y1 is a 1. Now over here, it doesn't have x minus x1, which means my x must have been 0. And then here, they already went ahead and just placed the slope attached to the x. So my slope is 4. Okay, number 10 and 11, bells and whistles should be going off because we've got these special lines. Now, whenever I'm doing special lines, I always go ahead and I just make a little graph and I draw it. So if I know y equals 9, here's my y-axis. So I'm going to say 9 is right here, which means my line went through this point, or this, any of those points really, right there. So if I draw my little chart, x, y, and my slope, I'm just going to go ahead and say that this was my slope, or that was my slope, I'm sorry, that was my point, because they said y is 9. Sorry guys, this is hard. Ugh. Y is 9, x must be 0, because it's right here on here. And they didn't give us any more information. Now, could I have chosen this point, -2, 9? Yes, it'd be the same thing, because they all have a slope of 0. All right? Now this one, same thing. It's a tricky little special case. So if x is -2, oh, we're going to pretend that's a straight line. I'm going to say any of these points is where my x is -2. So if I go ahead and draw my little chart, my x and my y, now my x is -2. So really, I could choose any of these points on this vertical line. I'm just going to choose -2, 0. And my slope, we know, is undefined. And I'm going to write undef, E-N-D-E-F. All right, so we've done two things so far. We've been given a point and a slope, and we've written it. We've been given our equation, and we've pulled out the information. And then this last part right here is write an equation in point-slope form that passes through these points. Well, if I were to go ahead right now and I were to write my little table, we have a problem. We don't have a slope. But thank goodness last week we learned how to find a slope. And we know it's our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do that first. So I've got 5 minus 0 over -2 minus 0, which gets me 5 over -2. So I know my slope is -5/2. And I can use either one of these points. Either one, you'll get the right answer of your line. I'm going to go ahead and use -2, 5, just because I feel like it. And then I'm going to plug it into my formula, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus, now here we go again, minus a -2. So I'm going to come back over it just because I don't have space to rewrite all this. Minus a negative really means plus. All right, here we go again. We've got 2 points. I've got, oops, sorry guys. And I need to use an x and a y, and I need to find my slope. So we're going to go ahead and find our slope. 0 minus a -2 over 4 minus 3. So we know 0 minus a negative is 0 plus 2 over 4 minus 3 is just 1. So we know that simplifies to 2. So from here, I go ahead and I write my m is 2. And I can use either one of these points. I'm going to use 3, -2. And now I'm going to write my line. Y minus, oh, here we go again, y1. So I see minus a negative. That means I'm going to change it to a plus equals m times x minus x1. All right. Now we're going to look at number 14. So again, we've got 2 points. I'm going to make my little xy because I know I need a point and I need a slope. I'm going to find my slope just by doing what we've been doing, which is 1 minus 1, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So 1 minus 1 is 0 over negative 2. Now if we put this in our calculator, we know 0 divided by negative 2 is 0. So again, bells and whistles should be going off. What kind of a line has a slope of 0? Okay, it's going to be a horizontal line, which goes through our y-axis. Well, if we notice, look, both of our y values are the same number, which obviously must be true because it's going through the y value. So no matter what point you put, 3, 1 or 1, 1, remember, I want you to write this in our special case form, which because this is a horizontal line, so it's going right here, because we've got a point 3, 1, 2, 3, right here, and then 1, 1 right here. We know our equation of our line is y equals 1. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and skip number 15. So now number 16, now that we've just done number 14, you should notice this. If you don't, it's okay, but our x values are exactly the same, 20, which means this is going to be a special case line. I'm going to show you first. So we do y2 minus y1, which is, man, I am having trouble now. 6 minus a negative 6 over 20 minus 20. So 6 minus a negative 6 really means 6 plus 6, which is 12, over 20 minus 20 is 0. Now, many of us made this mistake on our quiz and said that this was 0 slope. This is not true. This is an undefined slope. If you put it in your calculator, it specifically tells you undefined. So, I know if it is an undefined slope, it is a vertical line going through my x-axis, and look, our x values are both the same, which is perfect because x equals 20 is our formula. Okay, this last part, number 18, we're going to go to. So if we're going to put this on the graph, just like we did in the second part, we need to know what our point is and we need to know what our slope is. So x and y and my slope. So we see it's y minus y1. So it directly was placed into my equation. So I know my y is a positive 3. Now my x here, it was not just placed into the equation because it was changed to a positive, which means my x must have been negative 7. And my slope here is negative 2/5. So I'm going to zoom into this graph right here. Oh, it's still going. Oh, still zoom in there. Okay, so I know I've got my point, negative 7, 3. So I'm going to plot that point first. Negative 7, 3. Right here. Now, I know my slope is negative 2/5. Remember, that does not mean the negative goes to both numbers. So I can either choose to give it to the top number, which is my change in y, or my bottom number, which is my change in x. I'm going to go ahead and leave it with my top number because that's just where I wrote it, which means I'm going to go down and then to the right. Okay, sometimes it helps if you write that over there. So I'm going to go down 2, 1, 2, to the right 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to put a point. I'm going to do it again. Down 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to have at least 3 points, but I'm going to do another one. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now my line is not going to be very pretty. I'm sorry, but yours should be a lot prettier than mine. I totally should have gone through that point. And we see from left to right, my slope is negative, which is what it was here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and stop there. I'm going to have the sub pass out the homework now. Again, I will have tutorials tomorrow morning in my classroom. I'll be there at 6:45, assuming I am back up to feeling better, which I should be. So thank you for being good for the sub, and go ahead and start working on your homework.